An interesting episode of the Good Advice Podcast today. We're talking about scams, and one particular scam that happened recently makes it hard to give referrals to other businesses. If you're new in the business world and you're wondering why it's so difficult for people to recommend you to other customers, this is probably the reason why. Hey, my name's Blake Benz. I'm the host of the Good Advice Podcast, and this is the place to talk about the actionable, practical things you need to know in order to do business better. No fluff, just good advice on today's podcast episode. And I'm looking to dive into today on an interesting headline that we're going to talk about. Before we do, we have an incredible business that's sponsoring today's episode. Check out this quick ad, and we'll be right back soon. There's one single piece of advice that I give to business owners who are ready to scale their business drastically. And that's knowing exactly what you need to hand off so that you can continue focusing on what you're an expert in. It amazes me when I talk to business owners who are doing their own bookkeeping and tax prep, and worse, that they're going through all this paperwork at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, even midnight, slaving away trying to make sense of all of the numbers for their business. Business owners who are making it happen have already figured out that you can't do it all yourself. That's why I recommend Steve Lay with Equity Business Solutions. Not only is he an expert in bookkeeping and tax prep, but what I love about Steve is that he'll sit down with you and help you make sense of the value of your business beyond just reading a spreadsheet. You'll be able to make better decisions, and more importantly, you're going to save yourself the crucial time you would have spent going through QuickBooks or an Excel spreadsheet or whatever it is that keeps us up late at night. So save yourself some time and some money by giving Steve Lay a call at Equity Business Solutions, and he'll show you the value beyond your numbers. Go to equitybusinesssolutionsllc.com to find out more. All right, so let's get into it today. Let's talk about it. I always, whenever I do podcast episodes, I have kind of an idea of what I'm going to talk about. As I'm thinking about future weeks, I'm like, next week I'll probably talk about that. This thing, I've mentioned it on the show before when I've talked about how do I come up with the things that I'm going to talk about. Every now and then there's a headline, and this one is quite the headline because this is about someone that I almost did business with. So a couple of years ago, I had someone reach out to me. They wanted some help with their business, but I had a little bit of a weird vibe about this person, something that just didn't quite add up. In our conversation over the phone, basically, I think we couldn't agree on like the dollar amount. Not that we couldn't agree. I said, this is what it cost. And he was like, it's not really a good fit. But then he added to the conversation, hey, what would you say? What should I tell people if they have a problem that I have a criminal past? Which I was like, why would they know? I'll get more into that here in a little bit. And he's like, well, people, maybe they'll know, maybe they'll find out. And I was like, I would just be forthcoming and forthright about it. All that to say, we ended up not working together, and he never ended up being a customer of Good Advice. And I saw this person in the headlines 2 days ago, actually yesterday. This is yesterday's story. Of this headline, contractor accused of stealing $100,000. Interesting. Now, there's a lot to unpack here. I'm going to read this news story here for you in a moment. The bottom line is that, not giving the bottom line of the news story just yet. A lot of times I get into conversations with business owners who are brand new to the business world, and they are frustrated because they can't seem to get referrals from people. They can't seem to get people to recommend them to other people. I see this sometimes in paid networking. There's a very popular national organization that I've been a part of in the past, not part of it currently. I think it works for some people. I don't have an issue with it. But I remember in that paid networking event or networking group, there would be people who they'd be like, this group stinks. No one's giving me any business. No one's recommending any business to me. And I'd be like, dude, you've been here for like 2 weeks. We don't even know you. And the further I've gotten into business, it's an interesting nuance, actually, as I think about this, because I remember being the broke guy and the guy with no customers and just trying to make a sale and being like, man, if someone would just give me a chance, if someone would just help me and recommend business to me. Now, 6.5 years into it, I understand this a little bit more. I kind of get why people are a little hesitant. And even in the last 6 months for me, people who've asked for help and two particular stories. This headline, and then we did an episode last fall. I think the episode was called "Was This a Scam?" Which the person of interest in that episode has moved out of state, moved away, and I'm pretty certain that was a scam. I'll talk more about that in a moment. But I've just learned, being a little more bit savvier in business, that there are people who will ask for help who have no intentions of doing the right thing, and you have to cover your bases. You have to cover your rear. It's not the sexiest piece of advice, and it's not that there's any reason, I guess, to be cynical or mistrusting of everyone, but I do think that time does reveal all things. Is that a saying? Did I make that up? Maybe I'm butchering an expression there, but through time we come to find out the truth of the matter and if someone is legit or not. And it's why in a lot of these networking events, you tend to see the fruit of it after several months of being involved. The same thing is true for any other marketing efforts. If you're posting on LinkedIn actively and you're like, I haven't seen the ROI from it. It's like, dude, people are still getting to know you. You've been on there for 2 days. When you're posting every day for a year, then you start to find people who trust you fairly quickly. The same thing's true for podcasting. You're not going to see an ROI immediately. You see it from long-term investment, because it's through that people begin to know, like, and trust you. And I won't belabor that marketing term in today's episode. Chances are you've heard it, you know it. But let's get into this particular news story. So, contractor accused of stealing $100,000. And a little context here. Last last May, we had some pretty big tornadoes. We don't get a lot of tornadoes. It wasn't anything. I would say it's catastrophic in terms of the damage we had. But if you remember, which we have listeners to the show who aren't local at all, and some aren't even in the United States, but we had another tornado years ago in Joplin that leveled the city. That really was catastrophic. Um, Absolutely not the case here. We didn't have a city leveled or anything like that, but there was tremendous damage, and significantly more damage than we've had in any storm in recent memory. A very just an awful occurrence in our Northwest Arkansas region. So, what typically happens, I have a customer right now who is a roofer, a great roofer. I would absolutely, if you need any this is my shameless plug for him now that I'm talking about this. If you need any kind of roof repair or help, you need to call Colby Thornburg with Boston Mountain Roofing. The Boston Mountains are a mountain. It's a mountain here in Northwest Arkansas, or in Arkansas rather. So that's the name there. But one of the things that he's told me about in his world is that there's a lot of scammers and a lot of people trying to take advantage of other people in the roofing world. I trust him at his word, and here we have some actual evidence beyond that. So let's read this headline. A man has been arrested in connection with taking more than $100,000 from people to repair damages from last year's tornadoes, but not completing any of the work, according to court documents filed Thursday. This individual, who I'm not going to name since all of this is still in process, if you're local, you already know who it is. This individual was arrested Wednesday in connection with 3 counts of theft of property by deception. The Rogers police started investigating last month after Ken Swindle told police that he gave this person $36,897 to make repairs on his property after the tornadoes, but this person never made any. Swindle reported that he was contacted 2 days after the tornadoes by this person for work at his property, and he was given an estimate. We were easy targets, or at least I was an easy target, he said. I was so desperate to get a contractor to start working on my building. I was eager to assign any future insurance benefits to a contractor. He was, after all, licensed, bonded, and insured. I'm going to come back to that detail, which I think is very interesting. He was licensed, bonded, insured, and in addition to this, it was documented right on his website. He even asked before the work was being done, do you have the license to do this? And the contractor said, yes, of course I do. I'm not directly quoting at this point, if you haven't figured that out yet. Swindle said he later found out that the contractor's license is the most restrictive license. It's only for roofing. It's only for jobs less than $50,000 in damages, and it's only on residences. But I had damages on the inside and outside of my building, which were over $50,000, and it was a business. Rogers police received two more reports involving this person in the same circumstances. Renee Miranda reported giving this person $33,000 to make repairs to his residence at blank, but those repairs were never made. And then Doyle and Jeanette Strickert told police they gave this person $32,000 to make repairs at their home, but no repairs were ever done. Police obtained a subpoena. And at this point, sometimes repairs take a while. Maybe this is just a crazy occurrence of, oops, I didn't get to it yet. Probably not. Let's get more into this. Police obtained a subpoena to be sent to this person's bank and was given three separate account names, one under this person's personal name, one for the name of their business, and for a third business under their name. The police observed numerous transactions from these enterprise accounts to their personal account. There were several $1,000s at the time, and that this money was used to pay for purchases at many restaurants, Best Buy, and O'Reilly Auto Parts, as well as for Apple products. Ooh, the affidavit claims that the amounts deposited matched the amounts given to this person by Miranda, another deposit that matches the amount given by the Strickerts, and another deposit that matches the money provided by Swindle. This person was released from the jail on Thursday with a $15,000 bond. Arraignment on the 28th. Okay, coming up. Here we go. Swindle added that this person did not inform him that this person was a sex offender with additional felony convictions for failure to register as a sex offender, and was also placed on probation in 2023 after pleading guilty to commercial burglary and failure to appear and register as a sex offender. Swindle has filed a lawsuit seeking a return of his money. Yikes. That just got real bad at the end there. So, okay. Tornadoes happen, and someone apparently swindled some people and in the amount of $100,000. Now, I mentioned my friend Colby, who's in the roofing business, and he said whenever there's a big storm, you'll have people who pop up, businesses you've never heard of, who are trying to, even from out of state, who are trying to make a quick buck, essentially, and who are furthermore trying to put that cost on the insurance providers, for the home insurance providers. I think this is a really wild circumstance for me personally, because I had a conversation with this individual back in 2023, and this individual wanted help for their business. Like I mentioned, weird vibe, didn't really work out. But this is part of the reason why after 6 years in business, I'm very deliberate on certain details. One of those details is we always talk about price upfront. And so I'll be on a phone call with someone. I'll say, hey, there's a starting fee of $7,500. Is that doable? Is that in your range? Is that money that you're ready to part with? Blah, 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 however I'm going to say it. And typically the person will either say, yes, that's totally fine. Or they'll say, no, I can't do that. Nowadays, I do such a better job validating or pre-qualifying my leads that it's pretty rare I have this conversation nowadays. But if I do get into a conversation where someone's like, hey, if you could can we start work, but maybe I pay you in 30 days or in 60 days, I'm going to have some contracts coming in. Old me, or rather young me, before I was weathered by years of desperate business work, younger me would have said, of course, absolutely, I'd love to help you. Let's make this happen. I'm more than willing to be flexible. No longer will I do such a thing, because I have found that when you try to give someone the benefit of the doubt, and when you try to bend over backwards to help someone, and I'm kind of even hesitant to say this, because I think the world can use more generosity. I think being kind to people is a valuable quality. And yet, I'm not encouraging you to be cynical or be jaded or be warped by, there's so many scammers out there, but it's unfortunate that when I think of I'm not some incredible person. When I think of the handful of instances that I have been extra generous when I've been like, "Oh, you can pay me later," or, "You know what? Let's knock this fee down to a third of the price." I have never seen it pan out. Never. I've never seen it work out, ever. I can maybe think of actually, now that I say that, I can think of one customer that it worked out. One customer who I knew this person for a long time. I'd been friends with this person for a long time. This person was incredibly respectful from day one and aware of the nature of I don't say the nature of the discount. I wasn't like, I'm gonna give you a big discount, but just was like aware of like, this is a business transaction we're making. Okay. This is not a buddy buddy thing. That's probably the only instance in 6.5 years that I can think of where it actually panned out. In literally every other circumstance, it did not work out. It did not work out. And I don't mean it in a catastrophic way. It's just when I think back to like good customer versus not a great customer, or great work that I'm proud of versus I probably wouldn't be proud of that. It definitely falls into the latter. So, having said that, I think about this conversation with this individual, and the thing that's really interesting to me is, we get on the sales call. I'm like, you know what? Doesn't sound like a good fit. And he agreed. And I mentioned this earlier in the podcast episode. He said, before you go, what do I do for someone who, they're concerned about my uh, criminal record. I couldn't think of the word. They're concerned about my criminal record. And I said, well, why would somebody know that? Like, why would they know your criminal record? Which is just so funny in hindsight. Because at the time I was like, well, why would someone know you have a criminal record? That's like never comes up in a conversation. And he's like, well, hypothetically, if someone Googled me and found my criminal record, which uh, I was like, I don't know, man. Yeah, I don't know. If it was me, I would just be forthcoming and forthright. It just seems like it's an important detail. But I remember he said, he was like, yeah, because I have this conviction because I had a boss who the boss didn't pay me, and so I, broke in as I recall it, I broke into a store to get my paycheck, and unfortunately, I ended up going to jail. He pressed charges, whatever. And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I mean, I gotcha." And it's interesting as he told the story, and now this detail, now the dots are connecting. This individual did not inform the customer that he was a sex offender with an additional felony conviction for failure to register as a sex offender. So why would someone be found out they have a criminal past? Maybe if they're on a registry for said crime. Now it makes it so interesting that the way he presented it was absolutely not the reality of why someone would find out about this person's criminal past. But again, this person, it was funny. The person, as they described it, I mean, none of the charges are funny, obviously, but the way the person described it to me was a sob story of I did great work and I couldn't get paid. I kept asking my boss to get paid. My boss wasn't paying me. So finally I took matters in my own hands and I broke into the store to get my paycheck. Almost sort of like what would you do kind of and like I said, it was a very brief conversation. I was like, okay, yeah, well, thanks for sharing. Anyway, ended up not doing business together, whatever. But this is kind of like my point is, you got to have kind of a sixth sense about this kind of stuff. You got to start to like really think about this stuff. And unfortunately, we've talked on the podcast at length about scams, watching out for scams, and how people who scam you are very clever and very quick to diminish risk for you, to diminish risk and make you think like there's no way I could lose here. There's no way I can lose that. And think about this detail in this news article. He was, after all, licensed, bonded, and insured. It said so with documentation right on his website. And yet, this person got scammed. I think about a very common marketing scam, and I will call it a scam. Uh, 10 qualified leads straight to your inbox, or you don't pay. $10,000 in additional monthly revenue, or you don't pay. I'm really not a fan of this scam. And And here's the deal. I am being blistering in my evaluation of this because I know there's plenty of people who love this marketing expression. I hate it. I hate it because it's not the whole story. There's no such thing as a risk-free, no expense exchange of services. Think about this logically as a business owner. When you do a business transaction, we are exchanging something. When I hire an employee and I'm paying them their salary, I'm paying their monthly wages, we're making an exchange, my wages for your productivity. When I hire someone to do a service for me, I have a number of services that I pay for. I am paying money to get a service in exchange. So when someone removes the exchange and makes it one sided, that is too good to be true. And that is typically an opportunity to get scammed. Hey, I'm going to give you all of these amazing customers or you don't pay. I don't trust that at all. Now, to talk out of the other side of my mouth, I mean, I have a few different customers who I've done pretty well with, or actually a couple of customers that I've done really well with, where that's exactly actually how I exactly sold them was, one of those customers I knew had been scammed, and I said, "Hey, you know what? We've done business a long time together. I'm willing to do this work up front, and if it works, then you'll pay me then," which it did work. He paid me very quickly. I think I did a podcast. I need to check. I think I just did a podcast episode on this, maybe not. Paid me very quickly. That's because I kept my word. So I guess I would say I don't in general have an issue with offering to do work and getting paid later, but I do have an issue with the pizzazzy marketing of, we're going to get you all this money. It's going to be incredible. You're not going to owe us a dime, all this stuff. Come on, for real. And just again, know that there's a sucker born every minute and these people feed on suckers. So you can't be that kind of person. All this to say, this person popped up. Let's go back to the original point of the podcast episode. Why is it difficult to get referrals? Why is it difficult to get help? About 6 months ago, I had a gentleman similar to this person in that this person had made the rounds in the networking world, had popped up at a lot of local groups. If you're not from our area, we have a few different local events where business owners will come to. There's just a lot of connected people to one another here. Well, there was another individual, and I mentioned I did a podcast episode on this, who was making the rounds, meeting people, all this stuff, and was trying to sell some kind of employee. I can't even describe it because I can't even remember what the details were. It was this thing. It was like building equity in your business based on like the money that you're paying to employees and like different elements of your business. And for those of you listening who paid this guy, you can probably give a better evaluation of what this was. But bottom line, this guy seemed nice enough, seemed fairly harmless, and asked me. We were in a meeting one time. Excuse me. He asked me for some help and said, "Would you promote an event that I'm doing?" And I just had a thought about it. I said, I don't know. I just had a thought about it. I was like, Now again, younger me, who I've been there, where I'm like, please, someone help me. Like that part of me was very present, where I was like, of course I want to help. Of course I want to help. But there's another part of me that was like, I don't know. There's something's and I couldn't at the time, I couldn't put my finger on it. I was just like, there's something not fully right here. But I think what we agreed on, I said, hey man, if this is just like a local meetup for business owners, we have a Facebook group that's just for people to post stuff like that. I'm not going to endorse anything. I think I'd prefer just to kind of see where this goes, but you're welcome to post it there or mention it at one of like the local networking groups or what have you. And I think what I had said was something to the effect of like, I kind of want to see how everything simmers before I make any kind of endorsements here, as if, my endorsement really matters. But, well, came to find out that this person, their business was a scam, that there was a morning where my customer called me or didn't call me. I ran into my customer one morning and he had just found out that he had been defrauded something like $6,000, $7,000. Another friend of his had also been defrauded several $1,000s. Another friend of mine who I called that day and had said, hey, who had recommended this person also, or had been asked to recommend this person. I think she was out $12,000. And this was just like the tip of the iceberg for the number of people who were effectively defrauded by this business. And I think back to that of this person, bright-eyed and, relatively kind and seemingly honest, saying, hey, can you give me some hand? Can you give me a hand? Can you help me out? I don't know the balance between being earnest and kind and helpful and being wary and thoughtful. Because when you give a bad recommendation, it's not even, I don't even think of it in terms of like a reflection on me. For me, it's not like it's part of it. I mean, we all kind of think of this, right? Of like, oh, if I'm going to refer you business, I want it to be a good referral. I want it to reflect well on me, in that I didn't cause someone. Not only does it reflect on me, I don't want someone's business to be harmed because of a referral that I make, and that's really what it is. I think more about this, and I think one of the people who got defrauded 6 months ago, I think he and I had a conversation about this person. And then I reached out to someone else who I knew was a customer, was like, do you recommend them? And they're like, yes, I do. And then I went back to this person, was like, well, this person's saying they recommend it. Well, when this person was defrauded a few $1,000s, I gave him a phone call and said, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry that I gave that recommendation and gave that referral. I shouldn't have. And I'm sorry for you being out. Unfortunately, he was great. He was like, it's not your fault, my fault, whatever. But I felt wrong about it. I thought, man, I was asked to give a referral and I did, and I shouldn't have, because this person did not have positive intent for this person's business. So like I was saying, I don't know what that line is between being earnest and kind and wanting to help people, and also watchful and wary for people who will take advantage from others. But this happening twice in 6 months, I mean, 6 years in business here, I've never seen this happen at all. And it's happened twice in 6 months. It's desperate times for certain people, I guess. The deal is that, and maybe this is like the answer, non-answer, treat people with kindness, help people as you can, but you got to watch out for yourself. You got to cover your bases as a business and be careful. And if someone comes to you with a bleeding story, a bleeding heart story, and you want to have a little hesitation, I think that's okay. And if someone makes you feel bad for having hesitation, I think that may reveal their actual intent. And I never really take it personal when someone doesn't refer me business. Rather, I appreciate the people who refer me business, who I've known for a long time, because I know that they have come to trust me, and that trust is sacred. So if you're not getting the referrals that you want or the business that you want, it takes being known for a long period of time. It takes being seen and interacting with people enough for them to begin to trust you and feel comfortable making that recommendation. So, excuse me, goodness. If you're trying to make a sale and you're feeling like, you're not getting much traction there, keep showing up. Keep showing up. Keep being good to people. Keep helping people out. And eventually, I really do feel like it comes back around. But all that to say, we'll see what happens with this stuff. Kind of crazy headlines. So anyway, that's it for today's Good Advice podcast episode. If you enjoyed the podcast and you're a first-time listener, what the heck you waiting on? Click that subscribe or follow button so you keep getting good advice wherever you are. And don't forget, you can always support the podcast on our Patreon, patreon.com/goodadvice. Or if you're a business you want to sponsor the show, you can always reach out, Blake@goodadvicecoaching.com. Yeah, I appreciate you. That's today's Good Advice. See ya.